Hidden beneath the moss-covered pyramids of the Maya may lie a secret that has been buried for centuries, a story that speaks not only of the blood-soaked conquest by the Spanish, but of clues pointing to Atlantis, giants, and ancient civilizations long lost to time. Could these legends surrounding the Maya actually be true? Let's find out in today's video. But first, you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. Buried deep beneath the ancient stone layers of the Central American jungle, hidden below the towering pyramids of the Maya, lies a secret that appears to have been sealed away for centuries. A secret that belongs not only to the ancient Maya, but is also strangely entangled with the unspoken silence of the Spanish Empire following their bloody conquest. In the search for historical truth, people often refer to the fall of the Aztec Empire as a military triumph, but few ever stop to ask, behind that destruction, was there something the Spanish deliberately chose to conceal from the world? They destroyed temples, burned ancient manuscripts, and cast magnificent cities into oblivion. Yet what remains today suggests that the Maya may have possessed something far more valuable than gold or silver. When the scattered fragments are pieced together, they begin to reveal a much larger picture of a lost golden city, of giants who once walked this land, and of a forgotten civilization that some believe to be Atlantis. This is a journey back through the currents of history to uncover what might still be lying dormant beneath the feet of the Maya pyramids. When Hernán Cortés and his army set foot on the New World in 1519, history officially marked it as the beginning of the conquest. But perhaps behind that blood-soaked invasion was an encounter with things the Europeans themselves could not comprehend. Many scholars now believe that the Maya were not merely an indigenous people that developed in isolation, but could in fact be descendants of the vanished civilization of Atlantis. According to the records of the philosopher Plato, Atlantis was a mighty kingdom situated in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, where its inhabitants possessed technology and knowledge far beyond their time. Then, in a single day and night of cataclysmic earthquakes and floods, the entire continent sank beneath the sea. And so, if Atlantis truly existed, and if some among its people survived that disaster, where did they go? Many believe that they fled to distant lands in search of refuge, and that they laid the foundation for a new civilization elsewhere. The French scholar Charles Brasseur de Bourbourg and American archaeologist Edward Herbert Thompson both arrived at a compelling theory, that the survivors of Atlantis split into two groups. One sailed eastward to Egypt, where they would one day raise the pyramids of Giza, while the other crossed westward across the ocean to Central America, where they laid the roots of what would become the Maya civilization. There is a symbol that appears on the national emblem of Mexico, one that anyone who has ever seen it finds hard to forget. It depicts a majestic eagle clutching a venomous snake in its beak, perched atop a cactus rising from the midst of vast waters. To many, it is merely a striking and exotic image, but to the Aztecs, the ancestors of modern-day Mexicans, it represents the sacred moment that defined the destiny of their entire people. And according to some scholars, it may also be the final clue that leads back to an even older world, the lost island of Atlantis. The story begins with an ancient legend passed down through generations of the Aztec people. When their ancestors were forced to flee their homeland to escape a divine catastrophe, they were given a prophecy. It foretold that when they saw an eagle devouring a snake atop a cactus growing from a lake, that would be the place where they must stop and build their new kingdom. After a long and arduous journey through mountains, deserts, and valleys, they finally encountered this very omen in the heart of Lake Texcoco. Amid the vast waters, where an eagle had indeed landed upon a rock covered in cactus thorns, clutching in its talons a writhing serpent, the Aztecs fell to their knees and believed that the gods had blessed them. It was not simply a sacred sign. To them, it was confirmation that they had found the divine island. And so, in the early 14th century, the Aztecs began to construct the city of Tenochtitlan in the middle of Lake Texcoco. Unlike other civilizations who built on solid land, they chose to raise their homes, temples, and pyramids upon man-made floating islands, a decision both bold and profoundly symbolic. With its intricate network of canals and roads above water, the city of Tenochtitlan resembled a kind of Venice in the ancient Americas. But according to Spanish missionaries who later arrived, it was far more magnificent. They described a sprawling metropolis with stone-paved streets, radiant plazas, towering pyramids that pierced the sky, and a population of nearly 1 million, at a time when London and Paris had yet to reach such numbers. Tenochtitlan was not merely a capital, it was the Aztecs' sacred attempt to recreate the original homeland of their ancestors, a holy land lost to the sea where pyramids and temples had once stood before being swallowed by the ocean. And if the theory about the Mayas' Atlantean origins holds weight, then the same could very well be true for the Aztecs. They did not forget their roots. They rebuilt them with their own hands and memory. But that splendor would not last forever. When the Spanish arrived in the early 16th century, the city was almost entirely destroyed during the conquest. Temples were razed, canals were filled in, and the foundations of the ancient civilization were buried beneath new construction. On the ruins of Tenochtitlan, the Spanish built a new city, what we now know as Mexico City. In 2019, a declaration from Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador sent shockwaves through European political circles. He formally demanded that the Kingdom of Spain and the Holy See issue a public apology for the atrocities committed against the indigenous peoples during the conquest of the Americas. That request was more than a symbolic gesture of restored dignity. It was a sharp blade slicing through the thick dust that had buried centuries of history for over 500 years. Spain and the Vatican both responded with silence. Beneath the earth, under ancient monasteries, royal fortresses, and tightly guarded libraries lie thousands of handwritten documents from the 16th century. These are the fragmented remnants of the time when Hernán Cortés and a few hundred Spanish soldiers first set foot on the mainland and launched a military campaign that brought down two of the most powerful civilizations in the Americas, the Aztec and the Maya. If made public, those documents could rewrite history, not just the history of conquest and occupation, but the vivid details of massacres, forced conversion rituals, the destruction of native archives, and even the supernatural encounters that the Spaniards themselves witnessed but never dared to reveal. Some journal entries describe how priests saw strange temples that defied European understanding, structures where light from the sky would shine directly onto the altar on a single day each year. Letters recount ceremonies performed by the natives that reference the planets, Venus, and Mercury, with a level of precision that Europe had yet to reach. And yet all of these accounts, once sent back to Spain or submitted to the Vatican, vanished from the official historical record. The story began with a bold dream of gold. In the early 16th century, rumors of resource-rich lands in the New World began to spread across the ports of Spain. Gold, silver, and precious gems, all said to lie across the ocean in lands where the native peoples had never known gunpowder or cannons. Cortés seized upon this opportunity like a wolf scenting blood. But he was not a wealthy man, nor did he have the political power to command an army on his own. So, he did what adventurers of that era often did. He sought investors. Cortés made no effort to hide his ambition. He announced that he would lead an expedition to the mainland of the Americas to explore new territories. He promised those who joined him that if they succeeded, the spoils would be divided generously. 1/5 for the King of Spain, 1/5 for himself, and the remainder to be shared among the men. That promise, though far from guaranteed, struck a deep chord with those eager to change their fate. In the end, Cortés assembled a force of around 600 men. But this was hardly an elite army. Among them, only 32 knew how to use a bow, 13 carried arquebuses, and 14 light cannons were mounted on simple wooden carts. They had 16 horses, an apparently meager number, yet these creatures, completely unknown in the New World, became the most terrifying psychological weapon of all. To the native people, warriors on horseback appeared as gods riding beasts from the heavens. However, Cortés did not bring only weapons and soldiers. He also came bearing priceless goods, at least in the eyes of the natives. These included colorful glass beads, brightly patterned cloth, a few Spanish shirts, and shiny metal trinkets. Objects that Europeans considered cheap and trivial were welcomed by the locals as treasures from the gods. In a world that had never known glassmaking or complex textile dyeing, such glittering items appeared to be magical. It was through these seemingly harmless gifts that Cortés launched his first diplomatic campaign. He traveled from village to village, meeting with tribal leaders, offering glass beads, and receiving gold in return. The native tribes believed they were engaging in fair trade and brought Cortés golden axes, bracelets, and ornaments, all exchanged for gifts worthless by European standards. And when Cortés asked, "How much gold do you have left?" one chief answered, "We do not understand why you value gold so much. To us, these feathers are the sacred things. They represent glory, courage, and power." And that was only the opening chapter of a conquest that would change history forever. Alongside the priests who accompanied him, Cortés preached of God and salvation. But behind the religious facade were acts of subtle coercion. He persuaded the native people to abandon their own sacred idols and replace them with statues of the Virgin Mary and other Catholic symbols. Cortés even ordered local priests and tribal leaders to clean the temples daily and pray in the name of a faith they had never been given the choice to embrace. The religious nature of the conquest did not stop at belief. It was a tool to re-establish authority. As the native people began to doubt their old gods, they also began to question the very essence of their own spirituality. And little by little, Cortés undermined a belief system that had endured for thousands of years. In the eyes of the Spanish, this was a mission to enlighten the savages. But through the lens of history, it was a religious performance with deeply political motives. An unequal exchange, where one side offered tales of Christ, and the other slowly lost their most sacred possessions, their faith, their symbols, and their spiritual freedom. As Hernán Cortés and his army pushed deeper into the heart of the Aztec Empire, they were not merely overwhelmed by the grandeur of the cities or the monumental pyramids. What truly shook them were the blood-soaked rituals of human sacrifice, carried out openly, regularly, and with profound spiritual significance in the lives of the indigenous people. On the road to Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, Cortés witnessed ancient temples scattered throughout Central America. Temples whose steps were stained with dried blood and marked by sacrificial mats still bearing the outlines of human bodies. At the tops of the pyramids stood stone altars, where victims were laid on their backs and had their hearts carved out while still beating, offered to the gods of the sun, war, and rain. Blood flowed in torrents, cascading down the steps like rivers of crimson, becoming an inseparable part of these sacred rites. In a letter to the Spanish crown, Cortés once wrote that between 3,000 and 4,000 people were sacrificed each year at a single site. The missionary Diego Durán, one of the rare Europeans who lived among the Aztecs and understood their culture, recounted in his History of the Indies of New Spain that during a 4-day festival in Tenochtitlan, as many as 80,400 people were sacrificed in succession to appease the gods. Andrés de Tapia, a companion of Cortés, described these scenes in chilling detail. He personally witnessed a massive tower of skulls built from thousands of human heads, pierced through the temples and strung upon towering wooden poles rising up to 70 meters high. With his men, Tapia counted and calculated a total of 136,000 skulls arranged in orderly rows, not including those still scattered among the temples and public squares. Even the Spaniards, hardened by the wars and bloodshed of Europe, were horrified by the sanctified brutality they encountered here. But why would such a radiant civilization like the Aztec place the core of its culture and faith in human sacrifice? Was this simply savage cruelty? Or did it stem from an older, more ancient belief system, perhaps the last remnant of a forgotten civilization? Interestingly, many Catholic scholars began drawing parallels between Aztec rituals and commands found in the Bible, specifically, God's instruction to the Israelites to utterly destroy the Canaanites. Could it be that the Aztecs, or their distant ancestors, were descendants of the Canaanites who fled divine punishment and built a new civilization across the ocean? A more radical theory suggests that these sacrificial beliefs were the inherited traditions of Atlantis, a civilization believed to have perished in a cataclysmic flood, with some of its survivors migrating to the Americas. If that were true, then the blood-soaked rituals of the Aztecs were not chaotic savagery at all, but echoes of an ancient religion, one in which gods demanded flesh and blood to keep the world in motion. In the minds of the Aztec people, the world in which humans now live was not a permanent reality, but merely a fleeting chapter in a vast cycle of creation and destruction. According to their ancient mythology, the universe had already passed through 4 previous epochs, each one known as a sun, and each sun had ended in catastrophe, wiping out all of humanity to make way for the next era. This mythology was not simply a collection of oral tales. It was etched into ancient manuscripts, temples, and religious traditions as a warning passed down to future generations. The first epoch, the Son of Jaguars, was the Age of the Giants, beings first created by the god Tezcatlipoca. But because of humanity's arrogance and transgressions, the god grew enraged and sent giant jaguars to the earth. They tore the people limb from limb, bringing the first age to a close in blood and despair. The second cycle, the Son of Wind, was ruled by the god Quetzalcoatl. In this age, humanity continued to grow and multiply, but their irreverence toward the divine led Quetzalcoatl to punish them with enormous hurricanes. Those who survived were transformed into monkeys, forced to flee into the forests, carrying only the dim memory of a world they had lost. The third epoch, the Son of Rain of Fire, belonged to the god Tlaloc, the deity of rain and thunder. But Tlaloc could not restrain his fury. He summoned a storm of burning fire that consumed all life. Those who managed to survive were said to have turned into birds, flying toward the red, glowing mountains on the distant horizon to escape the flames. The fourth age, the Son of Water, was ruled by the goddess Chalchiuhtlicue. During this time, humanity was born again and flourished. But once more, pride led them astray, and the gods became wrathful. A catastrophic flood drowned the entire world in seawater and tears. The survivors became fish, destined to swim forever in the depths of the ocean. And then, after all had ended, the gods gathered to create a new world. They decided that one among them must sacrifice themselves to become the sun, the source of light and life for the next cycle. 2 gods were chosen, Nanahuatzin, a humble and impoverished deity known for his courage, and Tezcatlipoca, a wealthy god filled with pride. When the moment of decision came, Tezcatlipoca hesitated, but Nanahuatzin, without delay, leapt into the sacred fire and was reborn as the sun. Ashamed, Tezcatlipoca followed, but he could only rise as the moon, faint and fading in the darkness of night. However, the new sun remained motionless in the sky. To set it in motion, the remaining gods were compelled to sacrifice themselves by piercing their hearts and offering their blood to the universe. From that divine act of self-sacrifice, the wheel of time began to turn once more, and thus the 5th era, the Son of Earthquakes, was born. It is the age in which we now live. But Aztec mythology also left a dire warning. The 5th sun will not last forever. One day, this world will be brought to ruin by violent earthquakes, shattering all things and returning humanity to dust. When that time comes, the sun will fade, darkness will fall, and a new age will begin once again. This is why the Aztecs built an entire civilization around the act of sacrifice, not merely because of a brutal faith, but because they believed it was necessary to keep the universe from collapsing. Hidden beneath the mists of time and legend lies a strange story that few have ever heard. According to ancient Aztec mythology, their ancestors did not emerge from jungles or desolate plains, but from deep underground caverns, places regarded as sacred sources of life. From these subterranean realms, the first 7 tribes stepped into the light together, beginning the journey to build a new world. What stood before them were giants, immense beings of such towering stature and strength that they inspired awe and fear in those who looked upon them. As the legends tell it, these giants were the original architects who constructed the monumental pyramids in what is now Mexico. But before long, the gods grew angry. They believed that mankind had overstepped its bounds, raising towers so tall that they seemed to challenge the heavens themselves. In response, the gods unleashed a fiery storm from the skies, obliterating the arrogant architects. Only a few structures survived, among them the Pyramid of the Sun, which still stands today as a haunting monument to the pride of the past. One of the clearest signs of this pre-Maya civilization is the ancient city of Cholula, a site long forgotten beneath thick soil and dense vegetation. Located in central Mexico, Cholula was once mistaken by the Spanish for a natural hill. Unaware of what lay beneath, they built a Catholic church on its summit. never knowing that the mound concealed a massive pyramid, now considered the largest by volume in all of the Americas, 6 times larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. At the end of the 19th century, after a heavy rainstorm, erosion unexpectedly revealed mysterious stone walls along the hill. When archaeologists began excavating the site, they discovered it was not a natural formation, but a man-made structure composed of 6 layered platforms. To this day, excavations have yet to uncover the full extent of the pyramid's hidden architecture, but the mysteries do not end there. In the lands once inhabited by the Olmec, a civilization considered the forerunner of both the Maya and the Aztec, archaeologists have unearthed dozens of colossal stone heads, each weighing tens of tons and standing over 3 meters tall. What shocked scholars the most was the facial features of these statues. Low foreheads, thick lips, and broad noses. Features unmistakably reminiscent of African peoples, and entirely unlike those of the native Mesoamerican populations. Could it be that long before the Maya, there existed a powerful civilization that had arrived from another continent, perhaps Africa or even Atlantis itself, crossing oceans to reach Central America, building awe-inspiring monuments, only to be swallowed by time for thousands of years? If today's story made you pause for a moment to reflect on the mysteries buried deep in our past, don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to continue this journey with us, uncovering hidden truths and untold stories, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next video.